Welcome back to Established Dominance Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Ding, and the goal of this podcast is to set you up for success drafting quarterbacks this year. We'll talk news, injuries, draft strategy, and look at my top 20 draft picks at the quarterback position. And if you enjoy this podcast, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and feel free to follow us on X. All right, let's start it off with the news. Gardner Minshew looks like he's going to be the starter in Las Vegas. He likes to sling the ball, so this is a good news for Devontae Adams and Myers. Daniels will be the Week 1 starter in Washington. Not a big surprise there. We still don't know who's going to start in New England. It looks likely to be Brissett, but it might turn to May midseason. It's important for best ball, but neither will have a real fantasy impact this year. Allen looks healed up and should be good to go for the regular season, but his wide receivers, not so much. Burrow appears to be past his injury, so breathe a sigh of relief. Abear, though, he's got plantar fasciitis, and that's bad news. I would avoid him in my opinion. More later. In totally unrelated news, Dallas just lost their best cornerback for the entire season. He was responsible for 9 interceptions and 3 touchdowns last year. I've dropped Dallas down to 6th place in the rankings and moved Miami, San Francisco, and KC up a notch apiece. Now you're caught up. All right, let's talk quarterback draft strategy. You heard this before, but I'm still a big believer in potential and opportunity. Aside from all of the metrics, 2 of the biggest contributors to opportunity for quarterbacks are the supporting wide receiver cast and the offensive line. Now, some teams have great wideouts, but terrible O-line protection to get them the ball. New Orleans is a great example. Red flags when considering quarterbacks to draft are the team's potential to swap them out with a rookie waiting in the wings, a receiver core that's new or young, or a new offensive coordinator that they have to get in sync with. All of these are factored into my list today, even if I don't mention them specifically. One final piece of advice for quarterbacks. People are widely apart in some cases on quarterbacks, so check ADPs to see how early or late they're going in normal drafts. If you have a player that is in your top 10 or 15 that most people don't think belong there and tend to draft much later, then grab another person in your top 20 and be patient to draft that player closer to their ADP. Be careful not to get sniped by someone who thinks the same as you. Grab the player you want when it feels right and go with your gut. All right, let's take a look at draft trends in ADP. Now, this is wildly different in every league. Your home head-to-head league might grab quarterbacks in the 3rd round or the 1st round, who knows? But experienced best ball leagues, they can wait until the 4th round. The big picture is have an idea of where those quarterbacks will go based on the situation, whether it's in a best ball league, in a national championship, or it's your Burrow game back home and you know how all of your buddies draft. Okay, let's take a look at my top 20, and we'll look at a couple extra for best ball players. For this list, we'll talk about assumptions first. Players will be available for 16 games. We can't predict injuries, although I'm going to talk a lot about that. We'll use PPR scoring and 6 points for passing touchdowns. And then last, again, opportunities and potential are the key. I'm looking at offensive line, strength of schedule, supporting wide receiver, running back cast, and some other options, and we'll talk about those. And here we go. At number 1, I have Jalen Hurts. Now, his ADP, he's coming off as the 3rd quarterback off the board right now. He's in the 5th bye, and his strength of schedule is pretty nice. Now, he does fumble a lot. I expect his yardage to increase over last year, as well as his touchdowns. He's still got the same wide receiver core. He's got some extra rookies, and he's got a brand new running back. So maybe there's some rushing regression for touchdowns, but I think his passing yards and touchdowns increase. And I see him being number 1 overall. He has the least number of changes to his team for the worse. At number 2, I have Josh Allen. And this is a tough one because he's already been injured in the summer. He's feeling good now, but his wide receiver core is terrible. Right now, I think Khalil Shakir is the only guy who's actually not injured. Everyone else is nursing some sort of injury. He also throws a lot of interceptions, and he vultures a lot of touchdowns from his running backs. So if he doesn't score another 15 rushing touchdowns like he did last year, well, he may not finish number 2. But he has the best potential. His strength of schedule got tougher, so if you drop him down to 3 or 4, I could see that. At number 3, I have Dak Prescott. I'm a little bit worried about Dak. His strength of schedule got tremendously harder, and CeeDee Lamb still hasn't signed yet. But last year was very efficient. He had a low turnover rate. I'm not sure he can repeat that. And he's also got a little bit of a foot issue. But he faces the Giants twice. He's solid. His wide receiver core is great. His running backs are good, and his defense will get him the ball. I think he's a number 3. And number 4, I have Jordan Love. Now, he's coming off as the 8th quarterback off the board. He had a great season last year. I think he can only increase that. If he gets Watson back, Dobbs, and Reed, and they're all healthy, I think he can increase his number of touchdowns. Plus, he threw almost 4,200 yards last year. I could see him getting to 4,500. His problem is fumbles. But if his wide receivers remain healthy, he's good to go. And number 5, I have Mahomes. Now, he didn't throw a whole lot of touchdowns last year comparative to everyone else, and he had a high intercept rate. I think if he drops those interceptions down by half, which I think is totally possible, and increase his touchdowns by 5, he's definitely a number 5. I could see him beating Love as well as Prescott too. And that's your top 5. Now, don't get worried if you miss one of the top 5, or if you have one of the top 5 and it's not exactly the one that you wanted. Anybody in the top 5 is going to finish, if they're healthy, within about 2 points per week of each other. So it's not a huge drop off. So don't be worried if you don't get number 2, but you get number 4. You're still in good shape. Okay, at number 6, I have Lamar Jackson. Now, he fumbles a lot, and he also picked up Henry, who's going to run in a lot of touchdowns. So that could take away from his production. His wide receiver core isn't that great, but then again, they weren't that great last year, and he only had 3,600 yards passing. His strength of schedule is tough, but it was last year. So I see him still finishing at a respectable 6. At 7, I have Brock Purdy. Now, I'll tell you, the Ajax situation is kind of an issue, but if Ajax stays, I see him getting the same numbers as he did last year. And McCaffrey always keeps him high. Now, if McCaffrey gets hurt, or Ajax goes, or both, he's going to drop tremendously. But if all that stays the same, he's a number 7. At number 8, I have Tua. Now, I love Tua. He's throwing to Hill, my number 1 wide receiver for this year. His strength of schedule is the same as last year. His problem is he likes to fumble the ball. It's not necessarily that his O-line is bad. It's just that when he's out there, he's careless with the ball. He also has a high interception rate. If he can drop those, then he'll actually score a lot higher. He might even break 400 points. That's really the key for him this season. At number 9, I have CJ Stroud. Last year, he missed 2 games, so if he stays healthy, I think he could finish in the top 7. He's got a tougher strength of schedule, though, but with Diggs coming in, that gives him another mouth to feed and another guy who can score touchdowns. He threw for 4,100 yards last year. I think he can get to 45, but his touchdowns were only 23. I could see that popping to 27, maybe even 28. The team has a lot of potential, and so does he. Looking for a second-year breakout from this kid, he could easily finish in the top 7, top 5. So draft him with confidence. At number 10, I have Aaron Rodgers. In best ball leagues, Aaron Rodgers is like coming off in the 10th, maybe even the 12th round. That's disrespectful. This guy is a beast. And he's got Garrett Wilson to throw to. His running back is amazing. And their schedule is one of the easiest in the NFL. This is a top 10 finish. I don't even know why people are drafting him that late. This is a steal. If you're in 2 quarterback leagues or best ball, you need to target this guy as your second quarterback. You'll be able to get him easy. All right, at number 11, I have Jared Goff. Now, can he repeat his efficiency from last year? He's got a tougher schedule. Gibbs is a little bit banged up, but St. Brown's awesome. I think last year was kind of his ceiling. I mean, he threw for almost 4,600 yards and 30 touchdowns. I can't really see him breaking that. So I keep him here at 11. Number 12, I have Baker Mayfield. Now, he's going a lot lower than this. Last year, he was a number 10 finish. I think this is kind of his ceiling for him. But he's got his guys all back. They're all healthy. His strength of schedule is about the same. And they play Carolina a bunch. They play a lot of weak teams. So I think he can be successful. At number 13, I have Trevor Lawrence. He had the second highest fumble rate last year. And a lot of his TDs go to running backs. He only threw for 4,000 yards last year. I say only. But he only had 21 touchdowns. That's not a lot. His wide receiver core is banged up right now. He's got some talent in it, but I'm not sure he can get him the ball. And ETN, he's a touchdown hog. Rightfully so. He's talented. So I think a number 13 finish is about right. At 14, I have Matthew Stafford. Last year, he threw for less than 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns. If Nakua can be healthy and have a similar year, and Kupp can stay healthy, I could see him outperforming this number 14. As it stands right now, I'd say 14 is the best for him, especially if Kyron Williams has another great year. At number 15, I have Anthony Richardson. This is a reach for me. Last year, he only lasted a couple of games. He scrambles, he throws the ball very well, and he has a good wide receiver core. I just don't know if he can stay healthy. He has top 10 potential here, and his strength of schedule is very good. I can see him easily outperforming this. For me, it's about health, but I like him at 15. At 16, I have Kirk Cousins. Can he stay healthy after that big injury? I don't know. He's got the easiest schedule out there. He's got Drake London. He's got great running backs. I think he has the potential to outperform this as well. But it's really a wait and see how much it impacted him. We haven't seen him all preseason. At 17, I have Burrow. Now, Cincinnati's schedule got wicked easy. But Chase is the big question mark. Is he going to show up? I think he will. Have they been practicing together? Do they need to get a little bit on the same page? We'll see. He was hurt last year, only played 10 games. So health is also an issue for him. So based on those question marks, I keep him at 17. At 18, I have Caleb Williams. I'm a little bit unsure about this pick. He's coming off 15th quarterback in the draft. He's got a lot of talent, a lot of weapons. But we've seen this before. The overhyped rookie coming in, he's got everything he needs, and then he just falls flat on his face. He even has the third easiest schedule to prove it. So there's really no excuses for him. He's talented. He looks good. I hope he outperforms this 18. At number 19, I have Kyler Murray. Now, he's only really got one good pass catcher. He's got Connor, which is a great running back, but doesn't catch the ball. He had some issues last year with injuries, and his defense is terrible. All of those things combined, I'd say 19 is about the ceiling for him. But he's the 10th quarterback coming off the board. I would just let him go. At number 20, Derek Carr. He'll probably have the same performance as last year, and that's why I have him here. 3,800 yards, 25 touchdowns, doesn't really run it in very much. Will Kamara's health be an issue? I don't know. Their strength of schedule is pretty good. All right, it's a top 5 strength of schedule, so I could see him potentially outperforming this, but I'm not a Derek Carr fan. I'd rather have somebody else take him instead of me. Okay, here's a couple of picks outside of the top 20 for everyone in best ball leagues. At number 21, I have Justin Hebert. With the plantar fasciitis issue, young wide receivers, even though he has an easy schedule, I don't think he can outperform a 21 finish. At 22, I have Geno Smith. He's on the same team. He's got an easier schedule, bad defense, and the same 2 wide receivers. But Lockett's a little banged up. So this is about the right place for him. At 23, Russell Wilson. He fumbles a lot. His wide receiver core, he's got Pickens, but I honestly think Fields is going to actually replace him. So I'm going to avoid him there. But if he stayed the whole season, this is about where he'd finish. At 24, I have Gardner Minshew. Of course, it's about the wide receiver talent there. Strength of schedule is not that great, but he likes to sling the ball, like I said before. He'll give you some solid points if you're in a 2-quarterback league or best ball. At 25, I have Sam Darnold. Now, you would think that he would be higher. He's throwing to Justin Jefferson for crying out loud. But his past shows 25 touchdowns is probably his ceiling. Maybe even 3,000 yards or less. Probably 2,500 yards. And that lands him here at 25. At 26, I have Jaden Daniels. Now, Jaden Daniels is coming off as the 14th quarterback. I'm just not on the Jaden Daniels train right now. It's Washington. I mean, they have McLaurin. He's great. But he needs to realize that McLaurin needs to be fed. I'm not sure that he can do that. At 27, I have Will Levis out of Tennessee. Great wide receivers, but Hopkins hurt. They lost Henry. I don't think Pollard's, that good of a replacement. And he struggled last year. I'm not really buying into the Will Levis hype. And there you have it. That's the last draft position I'm going to talk about today. We went through 27 quarterbacks. That's pretty deep. Keep in mind that the ranking can change quickly due to injuries and other events, so monitor news closely as the season begins. And if you've listened to all of my podcasts, you've got everything you need to draft a dominant team in fantasy football right now. Before we sign off, though, I want to recognize our men and women in uniform who protect the freedoms we hold dear. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. And finally, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us on X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so you can stay up to date on our latest content. Next episode, we'll talk about strategies for free agent bidding or fabs, and make some updates to any of the top 20s as necessary. Until then, remember, established dominance isn't just a catchphrase, it's a commitment. Are you ready?